you mentioned before, about abortion and all this, and it reminds me of a phrase that comes up in Leviticus a few times, and that's that it says, like you said, how all of the nations of Canaan and the nations that the children of Israel that they drove out, they did all these abominations, and the land vomited up its inhabitants. And it said, don't do these abominations lest the land spew you out. So what we have to understand also, why it's so important to follow the laws of God and to strive towards that, and not to just be okay with our nation getting farther and farther and farther away from the judgments of God when it comes to civil government, is because we have to understand that if we as a nation collectively disregard those laws and commit these abominations, there are repercussions for sin that we don't understand and that we can't see, that we will physically encounter, such as the actual land that we live on spewing us out of its mouth, whatever that means. It's obviously talking about some great destruction or some catastrophes that will basically get us out of the land so we stop defiling it. And this is another reason why it's important for men to believe the law by faith. God doesn't even necessarily have to bring supernatural judgment. If we continue with the sodomy, the abortion, the adultery, and all the perversion, the land itself will spew us out of its mouth.
Well, you talk about the death penalty for adultery. It's the necessary counterbalance for someone who has a cheating spouse, because the Bible says in Romans chapter 7, verse 2, for the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she's loosed from the law of her husband. So if you're in a situation where you're married to someone and that someone committed adultery, then once that person is put to death, at that point you can be remarried. So
right.
You see the necessary counterbalance there. And in Leviticus chapter 20, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, the Bible tells us in Leviticus chapter 20 and verse number 22, ye shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my judgments, and do them, that the land whither I bring you to dwell therein spew you not out. And ye shall not walk in the manners of the nation which I cast out before you, for they committed all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. Now, notice it says all these things, and I'm reading out of Leviticus chapter 20, which talks about bestiality, which talks about sodomites, which talks about adultery, which talks about all manner of perversion. So the heathen nations, God says they did all those things, and so God abhorred them. What do you think he feels about a country, even today, that would go down this very same reprobate road?